Hi, I'm Daniel Crumbach, Head of Science and Education at Pinoy. Welcome to the Pinoy Medical Case Review video podcast series. Pinoy created this video podcast series in order to explore how metabolic analysis can either identify potential medical conditions or visualize the ramifications of pre-existing medical conditions on function and performance. We will present case reviews demonstrating how either of these situations were isolated through metabolic testing, and then discuss how medical interventions and/or an appropriate exercise prescription help to improve function or performance. We hope you enjoy the series. Welcome to a Pinoy video podcast where we demonstrate medical conditions, either pre-existing or identified through metabolic testing. And we demonstrate test-retest to show the limitation as well as the changes over time in improvements in performance. And today we're very lucky to have Annie Thorisdottir and her partner Frederick here. Frederick is one of Annie's coaches. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excited to be here.
Well, let's start off our usual way. Will you tell us a little bit about yourselves?
You want to go first?
I'll go first. My name is Frederick Agidius. I'm originally from Denmark, currently living in Iceland. I've been doing CrossFit for the last 10 years. And that was actually through CrossFit that I met my partner, Annie. Competed at the CrossFit Games 5 times, which is the World Championships of CrossFit, and has been fortunate enough to be Annie's hands-on coach for the better part of the last 10 years as well.
Yeah, and I'm Annie Thorisdottir from Iceland, and I'm a professional athlete. I've competed at the CrossFit Games 10 times, I've podiumed 5 times, and gotten the title fittest woman in the world twice, and hoping to get there again.
Impressive. And I understand you have a new member of the family as well.
Yes, we just recently had a baby girl. So now it's a little bit different. There's someone else planning and making the schedule, and we work around her schedule, but it's a new, different adventure.
Well, congratulations to you both.
Thank you.
And well done on your professional careers.
Thanks.
Well, before we get into your particular medical condition, and we get into the graphs and the tables and start explaining things, how did you end up working with Pinoy?
Well, I haven't been in the sport for such a long time. It's honestly, when I started doing CrossFit and started competing in CrossFit, I thought the lifespan would maybe be 5 years tops, and then your body would just have been tapped out. But you'll learn to work with it. You'll learn to train smarter. You learn to listen to your body. And there are so many things out there that we've learned to work with. So we started working with a heart rate monitor, and my coaching team. I've been with my coach now for 10 years. And I'm very much for, why am I doing this kind of work? How am I benefiting from doing this? And for longevity in sport, you don't want to just do everything, beat yourself up and hope for good results. You want to make sure that you're planning your season properly and you're doing the right things to get the most bang for your buck. And that's how we've gotten into working with a lot of different things where we can gather data and analyze my training and what it is that we're doing. And my coach ended up purchasing and getting a Pinoy device. And that's how we first got introduced to that. We've been using some different devices or getting VO2 max tested in some different places, but it's not very easily accessible. I don't think anyone really does it here in Iceland. And it's not something that I feel like I could use that much in my training. I just got my VO2 max numbers, like, oh, that's cool. But now using Pinoy, we were actually able to use it. We could even use the device in our training and then get the test retest and see what it is that we had to actually work on to improve my numbers. So yeah, that's long story short, how I got into working using Pinoy.
I couldn't agree more. There's so much data that you get from metabolic analysis that people just don't use.
Yeah.
And they don't make it so you can actualize it as a coach. You get a number and you just know that you want that number to go up.
Exactly.
They don't know why you scored that number, but they do. The data's all there, and I think that's one of the strengths with Pinoy is the fact that the evaluation of the results and the identification of system limitations will help, especially the coaches to be able to define what type of training would best improve their performance.
Exactly. Yes.
And instead of spraying the wall with different types of training, which a lot of people do, like you said, will lead to system fatigue and injury.
Yeah. And if you want longevity in any sport or in anything that you're doing, really, you want to make sure that you're training smart.
Yeah.
And there's not like a one size fits all for trainings. Like it's so important that you figure out what works for you. Like Annie and I have been doing a lot of the same things over the course of the last 10 years, but we're very different as athletes.
Exactly.
So our energy systems are not geared the same way. So like looking back, we should have probably done things slightly differently. Like the majority of the stuff that we do, we could have done together. But then like there are certain things where we should have probably focused on different aspects in order to maximize what we could get out of the training.
Yeah, especially when it comes to intensity, right? It's the where everybody's zones are. Well, makes a huge difference to where they're working. This is part of the issues of people working out in a group. Um,
Yeah.
is you'll have part of the group will be getting the true benefits of the training. A part of the group will be under training, and part of the group will be overtraining. And the ones that are under and over will not be actually achieving the performance gains that they wish.
No.
Yeah.
That's
So I think that's one of the biggest things. Now you've also added Moxie into it as well.
Yes. So we've been working with heart rate monitors for a very long time. And now we started working with Pinoy devices. And then once we started working with Pinoy, then we got introduced to Moxie at the same, like a little bit later. So we started using that a little bit just to get even more data, knowing it. For me, it's such a big motivation to see the number. I'm like, oh, I want to get that down. I want to get the number down. I want to make sure that I'm actually getting to utilize all the oxygen that I got in the muscles. And yeah, it just gives you a little bit more accurate, localized data, I guess.
Like we've used the systemic oximeters in the past.
Yeah.
I think the first time we started using that was probably in 2012. But again, I said, like that's systemic. We want to be able to look at individual components of the movement patterns that we do and figure out where the limitation is. Because just looking at as a systemic number is not really going to pinpoint anything except that you need to do better. And like, how are you going to act on that?
I agree. I love Moxie for testing. It works really well with metabolic analysis and for longer endurance-based tests. I've been working with Moxie since its inception, but I love Moxie in the weight room. It's absolutely amazing, like you said, to see you bearing your SMO2 numbers and knowing that I've got two more reps in me. I don't feel like it, but my muscles do.
They
And
say I
yeah,
can. Yeah.
and that ability to know how long you need to recover and the loads and the sets with the Moxie, it's a great combination.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it just gives you, like I said, more numbers, more motivation, and more accuracy in your training.
Excellent. And what would you see as the specific to Pinoy, what's your experience been uh, with the onboarding, with learning how to use the device, the education, everything else? What's that been like?
Well, it was really easy to use it. Thankfully, it's a pretty simple, I would say, setup and usage of it.
Mhm.
And then we've got a lot of help from Pinoy to analyze it, and from you to understand the data, understand what it was that we're looking at. But now Frederick has actually done all that.
All the certifications. And like at first, it seems like a daunting task to take on all this information because you get so much data out of a single test, and it's very easy to just get buried by all the numbers. But through the education and certifications, like it makes it so much simpler to connect all these different strains of data, so you can see the tendencies as you go along, and it just immediately just simplifies it. It makes it somehow like it makes it actionable instead of, as we talked about before, just giving you a number and telling you to go back to work. Like you can very accurately design something for the athlete you're working with to go like to take home and actually work on by themselves. And then you have the ability to retest later and could get a very objective measure whether this athlete has actually been doing the stuff that you prescribed or not. Like it's very tough to lie.
It is, and you also get better and better at your exercise prescription because you see the physiological changes that you're shooting for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that we talked about was some of the cool stuff that you've managed to identify, like the differences between intensities on different modalities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, like coming from a background in CrossFit, like it's constantly varied. So the fact that there is a difference between us, like being on a bike, being on a runner, or if we're rowing, or if we're doing thrusters or pull-ups, like there are all these different systems, and depending on the movement pattern we do, like it might affect us differently. So it allows us a lot of information about how we move and how this system is loaded, basically, depending on what modality we're doing.
I
Yeah.
think
I feel like it.
sorry, go
Sorry.
ahead.
I think it's so nice just to also see the data on, like we do all the testing on an air bike, but then we played around with the Pinoy device on the rower, for example, as well. And for some reason, I feel very comfortable on the rower, and Frederick feels like his heart rate goes really high on the rower. And us being able to see on the Pinoy device, it's actually like it comes so much down to the breathing, and it's so nice to just see it black on white. That is the limitation. And then I can feel the same when I'm running. That's actually what I need to work on when I'm running. And it's just cool to see what it is that you need to work on, because it makes it so actionable. It's not just like, I don't understand, I just can't run. Or for Frederick, it's like, oh, I don't understand. It's like going hard on the rower. I don't know why my heart rate goes so high, but you can see why when you start playing around with it. And I think that's not something that you have to do. I feel like doing the testing is what the Pinoy device is made for, but I really enjoy playing around with it as well.
I think that's extremely valuable. Like I talk to a lot of people that are not so familiar with rowing, and they don't realize that when their cadence picks up and they're pulling more wattage, that their system's switching over to anaerobic systems into glycolysis and then through to like phosphorylation and CRP. This is going to lead to them having to breathe more frequently. But they
Yeah.
keep the same breathing pattern with their catch and pull.
Mhm.
Yes.
And they don't increase their breathing frequencies, so they become acidotic, and all of a sudden they just die. And they get breathless legs. And it's really interesting to say to them, listen, you need to get an extra breath in to increase your frequencies to about the right ranges, and concentrate on expiration to be able to blow off the carbon dioxide. And they within that short period of time that you can identify through the analysis, they can make massive changes in 2 or 3 sessions.
Mhm.
Yeah.
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 So
Because now it's also not just you saying that, but they can see it, if that makes sense.
yeah.
And I at least challenge my coach a lot when it comes to that. He's like, oh, try to think about this while you're doing the toes to bar. Like, do it with this technique instead. I'm like, why? Tell me why. And then we need to test and retest to see if it actually makes a difference. You get so set in your ways, and there our coach can show why.
Well, yeah, you've got a great team around you, and that type of brain will challenge them, and that's for sure. And like you said, I don't mind doing the work. Just make sure I'm doing the right work.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we also had a good discussion. Let's bring in your particular case. Would
Yeah.
you mind kind of reviewing the history of your medical condition? When it started, how it started, and we'll walk our audience through the results of your metabolic testing online as well.
Yeah, well, I didn't really know what was going on. I had a cough for a very long time. I would say a few months. And I was able to train though, and I felt fine. I wasn't sick. I went to a doctor to see what was going on and tried some antibiotics, and that wasn't working. And like, because there was nothing really wrong with me, except for I was always coughing and I felt like my breathing was a little bit limited. And then I used the Pinoy, and we did the first test in the Pinoy, and it went okay, but I definitely didn't feel like it didn't feel like I used to feel. And then I went to see my doctor again because I really needed to get rid of this cough. And we did this breathing test, and we figured out that my lung capacity, like my exhale, did a strong exhale, and we measured my how much it was, and it was way below average for a woman my age, and especially if in good shape. And you actually found out seeing the same thing on that test. It was really weird how low my lung capacity or my lung volume was. And I got prescribed an inhaler from my doctor, like an asthma inhaler. And it was so cool to actually see when I did the test later to see the difference in my lung capacity. It wasn't like I felt significantly different between the days, but I just felt so much better breathing wise when I then did the test again. So yeah, and then it was cool to see that black and white, like Pinoy pretty much pinpointed. You had no idea that what had been going on, but you knew there was something wrong with my breathing for sure, just from looking at that data.
Yeah, it was very strange. Right now, I have up your test from the 26th of September, and it's just for the benefit of everyone. I'll just orient you. This is a flywheel test. It consists of a 3-minute warm up, steady state, and then I'll just bring up the wattage so you can see. Uh, then you're so at a steady wattage, and then an increase of wattage every 1 minute until exhaustion. So the one thing I noticed was that is always a key sign is you see somebody bumping into the same volumes all the way through.
Yeah.
Uh, and if you look also at the end of the test when you were in recovery, you had a massive ability to breathe deeper after the test was over. And I see this as a key sign of a respiratory limitation. You know, and you can breathe this deeply, but not when you're moving right now, or
Mhm.
frequencies are higher. So you know your frequency when you hit this depth here is way down to about 28 breaths. But when you're approaching 50 breaths a minute, you could not get over uh, about 2.7 liters per breath. You did a great job. You didn't hyperventilate, which is a lot of people do when their volumes are limited, but you did a great job of hanging on to it. But when we, like I said, when you look at your spirometry, they would have given you your lung volume and then the amount you could expire in the first 1 second, which is vital to performance because you're going to be breathing 50, 55 breaths a minute. And it was that expiratory volume that was limited. And that's usually an irritable airway for some reason or other, and it's usually expressed through a cough. So you know, just like I said, when we looked at it, I said, "What's going on with your breathing?" And you went, "What do you mean?" I've been having a cough for a long time, and I went, "Oh, okay, yeah, it's showed up here. This is," and if we look at your norms, like for somebody your age, height, gender, and ethnicity, your numbers were really low. Like we'd expect you to be able to score what we refer to as the upper linear numbers, right? As a pro athlete. I mean, let's face it, there's not too many pro athletes in your sport that do not have massive lung capacity. And we were
Uh,
able to, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
no, sorry, you continue. I'm just so intrigued.
Well, yeah, we could see that you were limited significantly. So you can see, you know, hitting about 2.7 liters was kind of your maximum that you could hit, or about 140 liters per minute if we look at what we refer to as minute volume. And again, just by looking at norms with the general population, it was limited, let alone for a pro athlete. So around this time, you were prescribed the puffer.
Yes.
So it was really interesting. You get a puffer, you know you feel better, but how do you know you can breathe better during activity? So let's bring up a test from a little bit later. So this test is from the 2nd of November. And what we'll see here is your numbers are now up to like 3.2 liters. So you increased by half a liter of breath. And that's massive improvements. And it makes a huge difference to your overall performance for sure. You move from what we would look at 77% of being able to use your volume to over 91%, which is obviously the effects that it was a good prescription of the medication and it worked to decrease the irritability of your airway. And you moved all the way up to another 10 liters a minute, which is again a really large increase in your ability to move air. So, what did you notice as far as your feelings during the test between these two tests?
Well, I just felt like I could be significantly more calm during this test. Like it just felt better, obviously. It's just funny to look at this now afterwards. I'm irritated that I didn't have the Pinoy device and do the test sooner because I had a cough from like February, March until there, like November. So if I just would have done this before and we would have seen like there is something with my breathing, then maybe it wouldn't have taken me 3 times going to the doctor to try to figure out what was going on with me. And them saying like, no, you're fine. There's nothing wrong. You just have a bad cough. It's like, well, you shouldn't have a bad cough for multiple months. There's obviously something going on. So like, that's kind of frustrating also to think about it. Like, obviously we adjusted my training a little bit between the tests, like what I needed to work more on, especially on the lower zones. But it wasn't like my training drastically changed. It wasn't like I hadn't trained at all before the first test. So it was so much came down to my breathing. Yeah, so it's fun to look at it. It's also kind of irritating not to have noticed it just before.
Well, I think this is one of the reasons why I came to work with Pinoy was the fact that I'm sick and tired of all this great information being available only in a lab setting.
Yeah.
And we wanted to bring this to the public, but the one thing that I was really big on was the fact that we need to evaluate the data for them and present clear limitations. And on the respiratory side, it's such a strong background of mine. It's so common, especially with elite athletes, when let's face it, they've done every type of training that they could
Yeah.
possibly do to reach their peak, but they still run and slam into a wall. A lot of those times you come up and you go, wow, it's been respiratory the whole time. No wonder you can't get any further. You've done every bit of training and you can't train through a respiratory limitation. You have to either be identified as a medical condition, but in your particular case, we could even improve your respiratory system even more through appropriate application of respiratory training.
Yeah, exactly. Well, now after this, I only had to use it for like a couple of months and then we saw the difference there and I didn't have to use the inhaler anymore. So it's not like I'm using that anymore. Now it's just continued focus on the breath work. And like now I know how important that is, obviously. And yeah, working on the correct zones to make sure that I'm hitting the zones that I need to be hitting and the intensity that I need to be hitting. And it's not always all out. It's actually like a little bit more specific training that we're doing.
Excellent. And thanks so much for sharing your case. But what's coming up in the future for you guys?
Well, we're getting ready for the CrossFit Open. That's the first part of the CrossFit Games qualification. And that's happening in about a month where that starts. So yeah, now it's getting ready and hopefully I'm going to be ready for the CrossFit Games this year.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, everybody has their fingers crossed when it comes to COVID.
Yes.
Yeah, we all want to partake and we all want to watch as well. So
We're missing competitions. It's like that's what you train for as an athlete. You want that adrenaline in-person competition. So hopefully that'll be.
It's great that you maintain your motivation. And I think, when you're working with data like this, you can stay motivated when you can see the changes happening. You can you can redirect your training based upon the new limiters found. As I tell all the Pinoy owners that I teach, your job is to create a different limiter.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Fix that one, and then there's going to be something new that you need to work on.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm actually excited. I'm going to do another test this weekend. And I'm excited to see what has happened.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, any further comments?
No, like in general, I think people should not be scared of the amount of information you can get out of this. Like this is not just for the elite athlete. I think it's something that's appropriate for everybody to do. No matter what level you're at, you're still going to want to get better. Like, especially here in Iceland, people are extremely competitive. So it's fun to see how this like average, like 40, 50-year-old will like go through such lengths to try to get better inside the gym, but not really taking into account like all these measures that are now available to everybody. So that's something that we're extremely excited about. Like we're owners of a big CrossFit gym here in Iceland, CrossFit Reykjavik. So having a device like this and bringing that to the members is something that we're truly excited about. Like we're nerds and we love data.
But not everyone loves the data, but they love to know what to do to get better. So I think that's very exciting. We haven't been able to test a lot of people during COVID, but my parents were on top of the list and they got tested immediately after me. And it's been so much fun for them. And now all of a sudden it's like, it's fun to go on the bike and do this because you feel like you're working towards a specific goal.
Yeah, it has a purpose. You're not just like crushing your soul every time you get on the air bike. There is actually a purpose.
Excellent. Well, that's very exciting. And how do they get a hold of it? If people want to book up with your gym and get tested, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, we haven't started letting people book up with the gym because it's not really, we should be able to do that soon now.
Yeah, restrictions are loosening up here. So like there's at least light at the end of the tunnel.
But I think you can see all the places where you can get tested through Pinoy, and there is one here in Iceland already.
Iceland is doing the most testing of any country that we've seen.
Of course. I was like, this is going to be a big hit here. I know there's going to be.
Amazing.
It's amazing. If I bring up the platform, it's always Iceland that's being tested.
That's awesome.
And you guys are doing a great job in your testing. And I really look forward to this being over and when you get more people in through your facility. Do you have a website they can go to, email address if they're interested in getting a hold of you?
Well, CrossFit Reykjavik would be the website.
Okay.
That's where it's going to be popping up. We're going to have the endurance seminars there and then the Pinoy testing through there. And then getting a hold, then it's just my name, Annie, at CrossFitReykjavik.is.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing your particular medical case for the benefit of everyone else.
Thank you. That's my pleasure. Hopefully it will help some more people figuring out what their limitations are.
Excellent. And good luck in all your training. I know you won't need luck. You're just going to work hard and you're going to work smart. So
Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
To book a sales consult, contact Pinoy Sales at info@mypinoy.com. To learn more about our products and services, attend our 3-part Pinoy webinar series. Register by contacting Zoe at zoe@mypinoy.com. To learn more about the Pinoy Metabolic Analysis Certification Program, view our video at community.mypinoy.com or contact Zoe at zoe@mypinoy.com. And don't forget to join us on Instagram.